In today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast, we are joined by two friends of the podcast, Matt Griffin and Zariq Xavier, to talk about the Detroit Pistons' upcoming playoff series. Why are they such underdogs in this series against the Knicks? We'll break it down, talk about all that today's episode, Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Ku Khahil. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons for the Locked On Pistons and the Locked On Network since 2021. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Make sure you're heading over to LockedOnDaily.com, typing in your email. You'll get a Locked On Pistons daily newsletter along with your Locked On Pistons daily podcast. And if you want to watch some of the Pistons playoff games with all of us over in the playback room, I'll link that down below as well. Also, check out the Substack down below. I'll link both those things for you down below. But let's get into today's episode. We are joined by Matt Griffin. You can follow him on Twitter, Griff1on1. You can also follow him over 100.9 The Payoff, his podcast, Teal and No Teal podcast, and also Sixth Man of the Year. You feel me? Zariq Xavier. You can find him over on Instagram with that exact ad. So, guys, thank you both for coming on. This is going to be a fun episode. Let's get straight into it. Who would have thought we'd be recording in April about Piston playoffs? Like, not playing playoffs. It's pretty crazy. But
I mean, I wasn't thinking. I mean, it hasn't been playing either for a minute. So
this is pretty shocking for everybody. So let's go ahead and get into it. We know now that the Pistons obviously will be matching up against the New York Knicks. I just recorded with James Edwards III about this upcoming matchup. You guys haven't checked that out, go check out the last episode. But right now, if you go to FanDuel, the Pistons are not favored or even close, really, in who they believe is going to win. New York is favored minus 460 to win the series. So I want to start off, whichever one of you guys want to start first. Why do you guys believe the Pistons are such underdogs right now?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last time I was on. You asked me kind of like how I would price the series or what odds I would give us. And I said like plus 220, plus 230. I think it kind of probably mostly boils down to the experience factor, right? Like the Knicks have been in this situation before. Most of the Pistons starting lineup and most of their rotation hasn't. Second, I think, you just look at it too. I think the most NBA fans would say that the Knicks have the best player in the series because he's done it in the playoffs before. And then they have 3 through 7. If we were to tier this thing out, you'd have tier 1, that would be all NBA players. It'd be Cat, it'd be Brunson, and it'd be Cade. And then tier 2 would be 3 Knicks, 4 Knicks. And then after that, you kind of fill out the rest of their rotation and our rotation in like tier 3 and 4. So, I mean, they're a more talented team. I don't think that you can really dispute that. And they're a more experienced team. So I think it makes sense that we're big underdogs. But I think we shouldn't be that big of underdogs.
I will admit I am not a betting man. When you said 260 between whatever it is right now, I don't know what the difference is. But I feel like this is an interesting series.
To give you context, Zara, real quick, the minus 460, I believe, is the highest. I think they're the biggest favorites of any round one matchup as of right now.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's actually really surprising. Okay. So I see this as almost even in my eyes. I know on paper why this would be maybe an underdog thing, but for me, as someone who has covered the team all year, watched all 4 games of Knicks versus Pistons, I feel like this is a series where, if anything, I would say it leans towards Detroit. And I won't go too long, but the reason why is every matchup that we've seen, it feels like the Knicks kind of just get outworked, right? Like there's a difference between just getting beaten and getting outworked. Like sometimes it just felt like the Knicks lost, right? And I was talking about this earlier with my friend Mike Philly, shout out. But I was saying how I feel like the key difference here isn't necessarily a statistic or anything. It's ultimately camaraderie. Like the fact that these teams clash in terms of vibes. The Detroit Pistons are a team that moves as one, like they all have each other's back, as we have seen on numerous occasions. And the Knicks are not. They're like the complete antithesis of what the Detroit Pistons currently stand for. And I feel like that goes a long way in the playoffs. Like teams that aren't that are built well, maybe on paper, like as we said, like, Mikal Bridges, Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, like great team. Anybody can admit that. It, to me though, seems like they don't really work that well as a unit. They're a 3 seed, but they have the talent that should be a 1 seed. And I feel like that's a glaring issue. I don't feel like Thibodeau has the same grasp he did on this team. And I feel like all of their flaws are maybe going to be spotlighted in this series.
Yeah, look, so it's pretty shocking to me that they are this huge of an underdog. Like being this huge of an underdog is pretty wild to me, because if you go back and look at their numbers since January 4th, which is when Ausar Thompson was inserted into the starting lineup. We lost Matt for a second. Let's remove that one and move him right back up. Here he is. If you look at their numbers since January 4th, Pistons offensive rating 10th, New York 16th. This is a 48 game sample size. So the Pistons are better than offensive rating. Defensive rating, the Pistons are 8th. The Knicks are 17th. If you look at the net rating, the Pistons are 6th. New York is 15th. So since January 4th, you can make a very real argument the Pistons have just been a better basketball team than the Knicks. Now, the Knicks 100% have way more talent. They have way more talent. They have, if you just looked at the paper, yeah, it looks like a better team because of the talent that they have on the New York side. And I'm not saying that the Knicks shouldn't be favored. That's not the case. I believe they should be favored. But I guess what it comes down to me, and we just recorded Squad Show today, which should be coming out tomorrow. I guess my thing is, what is the argument for the Knicks to be this favored? Because the numbers say the Pistons have been better than them since January 4th. So I guess for me, it just is they have more talent. I have to believe in the talent. Like that's really what it comes down to me in this series. But when I looked at the numbers, how much ahead the Pistons are in almost every category, it's like this isn't just like a 10-game stretch where it's just a feel-good story. This is a 50-game sample of them just being a better team right now than the Knicks. So again, I'm not saying they should be favored over the Knicks. I think that would be crazy, but or minus 460, the most favored team in the first round, I think that's pretty wild.
Like you're telling me if like Chicago somehow makes it to the 8th seed, you know what I mean? Like that just granted,
those odds aren't
not
yet
favored in. Or
yeah, I know. I don't think they have those odds in yet.
They don't have 1 8 and 2 7.
It's only again, 1 through 6 right now.
I don't know betting.
But if it was we would be losing our
Porter.
minds on here. I'd be like dropping bombs on here because of how crazy I'd be losing my mind. I'd be crashing out.
But yeah, no, I just wanted to add one more thing onto that really quickly. I don't think the Pistons, in my eyes, are massively favored. But to me, just as someone who's paid attention to both of these teams all year, I just don't believe this is a matchup that really favors the Knicks, like at all. Like of all the matchups they could have gotten, I feel like Detroit was the worst case scenario for them. Detroit has had their number all year, like I had mentioned previously about the camaraderie element, but also just like teams that have that fractures within, like you think about even the Draymond incident with Karl-Anthony Towns, the fact that after the game, all the guys still went up and dapped up Draymond and took pictures with Draymond. Like that's seems like maybe a small thing to some people, but those are like really big magnifying, like it's a magnifying glass on what the actual inside of that locker room looks like. And if these guys are really, blending all that well together. And I don't see it. And I feel like in all the matchups I've seen this year, and we'll talk about it further, I'm sure, but I just don't feel like New York should be favored like heavily.
Go ahead, Griff, wrap it up.
Yeah, I think like speaking to Zara's point, like they've had rifts, right? Their chemistry doesn't feel as strong. I feel like the vibes for the Knicks are not as strong as they were even a year ago. Mikal Bridges complaining, saying, "Hey, the bench guys could get more minutes," right? Like that type of thing hasn't happened on the Pistons. The Pistons haven't complained about being coached by JB Bickerstaff. I think it makes sense that they're favored. I'm not surprised they're favored. I saw, everybody on ESPN's panel or whatever picked the Knicks largely in 5 or 6 games. And I think that it is probably the way that the average fan is going to go. But to echo what you guys are saying, like I think it's a more than winnable series. I'm starting to lean towards picking the Pistons straight up. And obviously this is Locked On Pistons, so I understand that might be, a little bit biased, and some people will throw that out the door. But it's not a great matchup for the Knicks. Ours, right, man? Like this is not their ideal matchup. I think that it kind of lines up relatively well for the Pistons. Obviously, the Pistons have to play really well, but it's winnable.
Yeah, I mean, me going back to it, when I looked up these numbers and I tweeted this out earlier, the fact that the Pistons have just been better offensively, they've been better defensively, they have a better net rating by more than 10 spots since Ausar Thompson put in the starting lineup. The only thing I can come back to with, and look, talent matters, and once you get to the playoffs, it does. So I'm not, and I see a clear way. I can see a way in which the Knicks can shut down the Pistons offense if they decide to just trap Cade and the guys around Cade can't show up and can't handle the more responsibility. Like, I can see that happening. Outside of that, though, it's like, man, I feel like you're really putting a lot on experience and just raw talent to have the Pistons this big of an underdog. And maybe it plays out that way. We don't know. We've never seen any of these guys play in the playoffs. Maybe some of them aren't playoff risers. We all expect Cade to be a playoff riser, but we don't know that for sure yet. So, I mean, I guess we'll wait and see. And we do know that Jalen Brunson is definitely a playoff riser. So I get all that. That's why I understand going into a series, first time a team's in the playoffs, all that. I get why they would be favored. But this large of a favorite is pretty. I mean, it feels like a spin in the hand and slap across the face to the Pistons. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how it shakes out. This series starts on Saturday, everybody. First game at Madison Square Garden. We'll see how this plays out. This week's going to be a very busy week for Locked On Pistons. You guys need to stay tuned. We're going to have you guys all covered here. But coming up, who is the X factor for the Detroit Pistons? If they're going to pull out this win, we'll talk about this coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Hungry Root. My goodness, spring is here and life is busier than ever. Between work, family, and everything in between, who has time for grocery shopping and meal prep? That's why I use Hungry Root. It makes eating healthy, delicious meals simple and stress-free. Hungry Root is like having your own personal shopper and nutritionist all wrapped into one. They take care of grocery shopping and meal planning, offering personalized recommendations based on your taste and health goals. With their high-quality, nutritious food, you can stick to your gut-friendly, high-protein diet without spending hours of planning. The meals come together in 15 minutes or less, giving you more time to do whatever you want. Watch basketball, go work out, go play basketball. Whatever hobbies you got much more time to do that instead of having to worry about going shopping and cooking all your food. Take advantage of this exclusive deal. Get 40% off your first box, plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA, 40% off and a lifetime free item with Hungry Root. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Go to the description down below if you want to watch the Pistons games with me and the rest of the Pistons fan base. Join the playback room down below. Also, if you want to be part of the Substack and get all of the work I'm doing over there, click that link down below as well. But let's go ahead and get into this, guys. If the Pistons are going to pull off this win, the very obvious answer here for who is the X factor is Cade Cunningham, but that's a cop-out. We're not doing that. Obviously, Cade has to play well. Your best player has to be the best player on your team. That's very clear. We're ruling him out. If there is an X factor, if you are told in 2 weeks, if you were asleep and you were told in 2 weeks, the Pistons pulled this out, they won, who do you guys believe would be the X factor for why they were able to pull it off? Whichever one of you guys want to start first.
To me, it's Isaiah Stewart. I have two answers on this, but I'm pretty sure at least one of you will pick the other one. But to me, it's Isaiah Stewart. And I feel like the perfect example of this was the April 10th game against New York, where he played, if I remember correctly, if not the entire third quarter, almost the entire third quarter, and almost all of the fourth quarter up until he fouled out. And JB was playing him with 5 fouls in the second half. He effectively shut down karl-Anthony Towns, and that is a difficult thing to do. Obviously, Cat, and we talk about talent, right? Like, Cat is supremely talented. He is one of, if not the top 3 best centers in the league, I would say probably top 2 this year, right? I feel like having him shut down by Isaiah Stewart, having him bothered also by Isaiah Stewart, is going to be extremely critical to the Pistons' success, because like you had mentioned, Jalen Brunson, playoff riser, right? And this is, I don't want to cut into anybody's point, but I'm just going to say that, like, I feel like he has a unique scenario in this playoffs where he's going to be guarded by a guard who is capable defensively, not trying to like disrespect any, Mike Conley that he had previously. Like, think back to Dallas the year before he went to New York. Like, it was Mike Conley who was primarily guarding him. New York, it was Tyrese Halliburton, who obviously we all know to be one of the best guards in the league, but defense has never been his strong suit. I feel like you had mentioned, like Cade is a obvious like number one X factor, but to me, I feel like we haven't seen the best of Jalen Brunson against Detroit this year, and I feel like Cade plays a big role in that. So they're going to look to Karl-Anthony Towns to be their primary offensive weapon. And if you have Isaiah Stewart playing as well as he did against Karl-Anthony Towns for 4 to 7 games, I feel like that makes this series a lot more winnable for Detroit.
Go ahead, Griff.
Yeah, I think this could definitely go a few different ways, and the Stu point is super valid. I'm going to go with Ausar. I think for 2 reasons. One, obviously, like he's going to be Brunson's primary matchup. You have to assume for a lot of the game. I know that he wasn't to start the last game against New York, but I have to imagine that they're going to put one of the best perimeter defenders in basketball on Jalen Brunson. And I don't necessarily have questions that he can guard him. I have questions about one. Maybe I should say I have questions, but I think that it's important how he performs as far as navigating screens, because Brunson's, his whole MO, especially in the playoffs, is hunting switches, finding the target and hunting them. We've seen Ausar be able to kind of glide through and around screens throughout the season and stay sticky on guys. Obviously, he's a much better athlete than Brunson. But the other side of this is, one, Brunson very adept at drawing fouls, and I think that if Ausar gets in foul trouble early on, like you start to struggle a little bit to find like a matchup that you really feel confident in stomping Brunson. I think Schroeder will do an okay job. I really liked his ball pressure this season. I think Cade can hold up a little bit, but at the end, Ausar is your stopper, and I think it's important that he stays out of foul trouble. And I also think that it's important that he's able to find his footing in the half court on offense. It feels like it's a little bit hit or miss. I know that we've all enjoyed his drives this season. We all enjoy the passing, but I do wonder if in a playoff series, there's no doubt that, the guy that the Knicks have circled as far as, hey, this is a help point, this is a pressure point on their offense, is Ausar Thompson. The same way that I think our coaching staff is looking at Josh Hart and saying, hey, we can cheat off this guy. So if we can find a way to keep Ausar involved on offense, because I think that the more usage he has, it feels like the more useful he is. You don't really want him off the ball. So finding that usage, finding that balance on offense for him to create when necessary. I'm not sure there's going to be a big Tobias series just because of the wings that are going to be guarding him. I don't know if he can find that the post mismatches that he likes to hunt. I'm not sure that the Knicks even have a guy out there for him to do that against. So we're probably going to need Ausar to bring a little bit of juice offensively, and he's got the most important defensive matchup in my opinion. So it's him.
Yeah, I'm going with Ausar as well. I think Stu is a great one. We talked about after the last or 2 episodes ago. Stu's defense in that second half was absurd. He had one of the best 0.1 rebound, 1 assist games I've ever seen. And I say this disclaimer all the time. I was not alive for Ben Wallace a lot, or functional for a lot of Ben Wallace's prime. So anyone who witnessed him, don't come in here screaming at me. I don't remember a lot of Ben Wallace's games, but in the games I've watched, Stu had one of the best 0-point games I've ever seen in my life. He was fantastic. I do agree that it's going to be Ausar Thompson. There is no coincidence that once this team took off, it was when Ausar Thompson brought into the starting lineup. This starting lineup has been fantastic with Ausar Thompson in the starting lineup because of the defense he brings. Matt, I agree that because Brunson's on the other end, that is Ausar's main priority. If he gets into foul trouble and he's out, if he gets quick 2 fouls and he's out now the rest of the first half, it's going to be hard for Detroit. If he gets 4 fouls midway through the third, it's going to be hard for Detroit. He has to stay out of foul trouble for them to be able to pull this win off in this series. And then offensively, I do agree we lost Matt for a second there. I'll go ahead and move me and Zara over real quick. If this team is going to make this series, if they're going to pull this off and win this series, they need Ausar Thompson. They need Ausar Thompson to be usable offensively. Because like you said, Matt, the Pistons are going to do the same thing to Josh Hart. They're going to help off Josh Hart. We'll see who they actually put on Josh Hart. I think it might be Jalen Duren and have him just roam. I'm sure New York's probably going to do the same thing or think about doing the same thing to Ausar. The Pistons have gone through stretches where it seems like, okay, they're figuring out how to use Ausar. They're using him a lot more in the half court. He's touching the ball a lot more. He's being used in screening action. etc. The last 10 games, he's averaging like 15 points a game. He was playing really well the last 10 games offensively. I thought he was in the middle of his best offensive stretch of the year. But then obviously you go through stretches like last month in March, where he's really struggling to get anything going. It seems like they're not going to him as much. It seems like he's more off ball, just roaming the baseline. And now your offense isn't going as well as you'd like it to go. The Pistons offense has been predicated all year on transition offense. So having him on the floor, creating havoc, forcing steals, forcing turnovers, that's really going to help their offense. But they're going to have to be able to function within the half court. And you can't, the solution cannot be like I've complained about for a few episodes and a few games. The solution cannot be bench Ausar bringing a shooter, because that it doesn't work. You forfeit defense, they end up killing you on the other end. It just isn't work. You have to have a solution that involves Ausar still on the floor. We've seen them find these solutions. They've just gone away from it. They've gone up and down with it. So whether he can be impactful offensively, I think will be huge in the Pistons' ability to pull off this series.
Yeah, I'm with you both on that one. Ausar was also the one I was going to bring up. I was like, there's no way. Yeah. There's no way you don't bring up Ausar. But also, I just wanted to give, and I won't go too in depth on this, but I also wanted to give quick shout to Ron Holland. I feel like he will be extremely important in a playoff setting. I feel like, we talk about playoff risers. I know that there was the whole play-in game, or what was that? Was it the play-in game, or I forgot what game that was against Milwaukee, where the free throw happened?
In-season tournament.
In-season tournament. I don't know why I was saying play-in. And I meant in-season tournament. But Ron Holland, to me, I feel like has grown each and every game. I feel like he has risen to the occasion multiple times. And to me, the biggest thing is he does not seem afraid of the moment. I feel like he has been extremely consistent, finding buckets where he can. And I feel like they're not going to be looking at Ron Holland to get some transition buckets, to even initiate on offense off the bench occasionally. And I feel like that's where he'll thrive.
Matt, you got any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yeah, to the Ron point, like, it is interesting because I think if you're JB Biggerstaff, you're heading into the series thinking like, hey, as much as the X's and O's matter, like, they are these big underdogs and they can't have that mentality, right? Like they probably want to get into the series. They want to muck it up a little bit. We don't have the firepower offensively that New York does, right? We want to play the series in the mud. And if I've learned anything, following the NBA as closely as I have the last 2 years, old coaches like their older players, man. They just trust the vets in a way that they don't for rookies. I think that is just kind of always the case. So I'm a little hesitant to say, hey, maybe Ron, like, I think it's possible that Ron doesn't have a big role in this series, but he's been taking a lot of text minutes, later in games. It feels like they're going to need to bring in a wing forward off the bench, a guy that can play the 3 or the 4. And if they don't think it's Tech, the only other guy that it can be is Holland, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how they strike that balance. I think Zar made a great point. Like, he's not going to be scared. That the moment's not going to be too big. He's going to show up. He's going to play his game one way or another. He's going to bring physicality to the floor. He's going to bring athleticism. He's going to run. He's going to defend. If Ausar does get in foul trouble, maybe you throw Ron on Jalen Brunson to give him a similar, vibe of that athleticism, that size, right? It's tough to deal with. Ron, has a habit of picking up some dumb fouls, so maybe that doesn't work out, but I'd be happy to see Ron on the floor, get him that experience. Let's see if he can kind of shift the energy of a game. If the Pistons are down 9 early in the second quarter and it feels like things are sluggish, I would love to throw Ron Holland in the game. It's just kind of a changeup.
Yeah, and look, Ron's 19 years old. He was not expected to be in the rotation, or at least there was questions, I should say, not expected. There were questions about whether he'd be a part of the rotation coming into the season, and he's blown past that. He's 19 years old. He's playing 17 minutes for a top 6 seed. He's proven that he's ready for the moments. He's proven that he's gotten better and better and better as the season's gone on. I think he could be a big factor in this series. I just want to put this out there. If he is not Pistons fans, do not go crazy on him. He's a 19-year-old rookie. So, like, it is like, if he isn't able to do it, it is what it is. But I could definitely see him coming into the game, especially to the point Zar brought up, where emotionally the Pistons have to win this. The Pistons have to win this emotionally and mentally. They have to kind of like establish like the physicality, all of that. And if there's a player on the team that's going to do that, it's Stu and Ron. And those guys are not going to back down from anything. If Ron can get, like you mentioned, Matt, if Ausar doesn't get into foul trouble, I think Ron's probably their next best option. And Tech has been losing his minutes as of late. I don't know if Pistons fans have picked up on it. He has been losing a lot of his second half minutes to Ron over the last. What is it?
I said, trust me, I have.
Over the last 5 games, he's been taking Tech's minutes in the second half. So I'd expect Ron to get the chance. Very much so. I expect early in the series for him to get the chance to prove that he's ready for this moment. If he is, I think he's going to play a big factor. I could see, like Matt said as well, though, if it starts off and Ron seems, not that he's the lights are too bright for him, but you're 19 years old in the playoffs. Maybe you make a mistake here. Maybe you miss a rotation, whatever. I could see earlier in the series him getting the chance of maybe JB reeling it back and trusting the veterans more. I'd love to see Ron be a factor because I think he is the only other wing defender they truly got. And if he can be a factor, it really gives the Pistons a chance to win this series. I love all the answers. Another guy I didn't hear no one bring up, which we can't spend much time on it at all. I just want to bring him up. There's been some people pointing out how Malik Beasley has been inconsistent in the playoffs. If he doesn't shoot well in the playoffs, I think they're cooked. So he has to shoot well in the playoffs for them to have a chance. But I'm going
one of the two guards has to be on a burner, I think.
No, yeah, for sure. THJ or Malik, they need them to be able to hit some outside shots. So we'll see which one. Hopefully both of them are able to do it. But who would have thought we'd be talking about this? Pistons playoff season right around. We're talking Joe Dumars. He might be coming back to the NBA as an executive. We'll talk about whether he should be coming back. Are the Pels making a mistake? What do Pistons fans, what do people that were around in Detroit during Joe Dumars' time think about this? We'll talk about that coming up. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about it. When was the last time you had a service emergency? If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. That's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications all through an app on your phone or computer. I love that I don't have to carry 2 phones. With OpenPhone, I can manage business calls and text from one app whether I'm at the desk or on the go. My favorite feature is the shared inbox. Your team can jump into any conversation without missing a beat. The AI call transcripts and summaries save you time on follow-ups and ensure you never lose track of customer interaction. OpenPhone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. If you're switching from another service, OpenPhone will even port your existing numbers over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers with OpenPhone. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Check out the description down below for all the links. You guys get the message. All right. 1 week away from the Pistons, or less than a week away from the Pistons, having their first playoff series since the Blake Griffin Pistons. You wouldn't think that the name Joe Dumars would be coming up as an executive, but here we are. It is. And there's no way we could have just not talk about it. Joe Dumars is a legend for the Pistons, both as a GM and as a player. He brought them championships in both as a player and as a GM, obviously in 2004. He has not been in the executive game since being laid off by the Pistons almost a decade, actually, yeah, over a decade ago now. But it sounds like he might be going to the Pelicans. The Pelicans just fired their GM, President of Basketball Operations, David Griffin. And it sounds like that Joe Dumars is the wide, far, and ahead leader for this job. I just want to get thoughts from everybody. Because obviously the way Joe, there's been a lot of talk about how, how accepted is Joe by Detroit right now. He hasn't come back for really any event, any jersey retirements. He's been, he kind of kept his distance from the Pistons since everything went downhill. So how do you guys think about this? Do you guys think this is a mistake from the Pelicans? How do you guys think Joe should be viewed? Just what's your overall thoughts right now on Joe Dumars being back in the executive talks in the NBA?
Yeah, I'm not. Look, I love Joe Dumars. I don't have a negative opinion of him as a Pistons fan. I wish the Fieldhouse had stayed in Detroit. That would have been nice. I like playing there, but I think bringing him back to run your basketball team is a horrible idea. He hired like 6 straight terrible coaches, traded Aaron Aflalo for nothing, gave out bad contract after bad contract, bad draft pick after bad draft pick. Did draft Andre Drummond, which was pretty good. Did draft Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which I think that you could say is pretty good. But outside of that, like every move was pretty horrific. There's a reason that we started this rebuild with no assets. this is a bad decision, I think, like pretty comfortably, especially off the back of firing David Griffin, who, hey, have the Pelicans performed the way that you wanted them to these past few seasons? No, but David Griffin can't make these guys healthy. Like they have talent on the roster. He's done a good, they've drafted really well. I don't really know what you wanted him to do.
Well, I I was trying really hard not to laugh during that. The field house thing caught me so off guard. But shout out
Draymond
to
Green there.
Yeah, shout out to the Pistons Twitter runs back then. Anyway, yeah, Joe Dumars, Detroit legend, hell of a player. They named an award after him. Has been representing the NBA on the grander scale. I feel like as a GM, this is probably like the most I've watched the Pistons my whole life take I could give, but I feel like as a GM, he is the anti-Troy Weaver. Horrible drafter, but I feel like he can build a roster around players, where Troy was, great drafter, horrible roster construction. So that'll be interesting for New Orleans as they are now entering a very important draft. And I feel as if he deserves another shot. I feel like when you win a championship with a roster that you made, even if you draft Darko, even if you trade Chauncey for AI, even if you give Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva big contracts,
Josh Smith,
even if you give Josh Smith a big contract that, let down a 10-year-old Zariq on his birthday, I feel like you deserve a second shot. So to me, I think we should give Joe D one more.
He doesn't even believe this. I mean, can we just look, man? A great roster builder. I just got to look, bro.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond was like, we need Josh Smith to play the 3.
So
that's not great roster building. That's not good roster construction.
So, this is what I'm going to say. The way it ended in Detroit was about as bad as it could have ended. Like, it was how it ended after his moves after the Chauncey trade, which, just to give some context to, now that I'm older, I understand the thought process, what he was trying to go for here. He was trying to get an expiring contract, create some flexibility, and kind of start this next version of, get ahead of it before Chauncey was washed or whatever. Kind of like how Bill Belichick does, trade him a year early rather than a year late. I understand the thought process. Create that cap space and then try to create this next iteration before it's too late, because he kind of felt like that they had hit a wall. Now, they had made the Eastern Conference Finals 6 straight years. You could argue whether they should actually have just given up on that or just kept going. It is what it is. But I understand the thought process of why he did that. Every other move after that, I struggle with understanding. I understand the initial thought behind it. Every other move he made after that was pretty tough to defend, and obviously led the Pistons to the playoff win drought they're currently in. I do have a level of. Also, I do want to say this. Despite all of this, Joe Dumars should absolutely be accepted back by the Pistons. Like this whole little,
yes,
he is a Detroit legend. He was a part of every single championship. There's no way he should not be welcomed in Detroit. He should not be booed in Detroit. You don't get the 04 Pistons without him. You don't get the 88, 89, 90 bad boys without Joe Dumars. To act like he's not a legend in Detroit is pretty crazy. So I think that's all wild.
For sure.
There is a part of me that does somewhat believe what Zar is saying, that I do feel like he probably deserved a second chance out the gate. Not out the gate, right after being fired, but maybe a few years after being fired. I do believe he probably should have got another chance. When you build a team that gets the Eastern Conference Finals that many years in a row as the Eastern Conference powerhouse for that long, and you get a championship, I think you should at least get another chance to prove that, hey, I just messed up this one, but I should get another shot. I do somewhat agree with that. Now, it's been such a long time since that it does bring...
Basketball hasn't changed much since 04, so it's cool. Just run that back.
It's been such a long time that it does give me some okay, well, why did it take this long? Why did nobody believe that he could, get another chance? Why did it take over a decade? But there, I can't lie. There is a part of me that's like, dude, he did build a powerhouse for like 7 years in the East and had them knocking on the door consistently to where, again, I don't know how this is going to go because it sounds like Shamit, I believe I'm pronouncing his last name right. Shamit Dua reports that the Pelicans ownership wants to trade Zion immediately this offseason. So, well, I mean, that is going to be quite the first move and quite the first transaction you'll have to navigate if he takes over. But I mean, look, I'm happy. In all honesty, I am happy that Joe gets a second chance. Guy, I know he wants one, and he's a Detroit legend. So I hope the second chance goes well. But look, the final 7-6 years was really rough, and I hope for Pelicans fans' sake that he's closer to the guy that he was during the elite years of the going to work team than he was the Greg Monroe, era, Brandon Knight era of Piston basketball.
I just want to say this really quickly, just because I meant no disrespect by the laugh. If you're out there, Joe D, that was okay. I want to give context here because much like how you were talking about Ben Wallace, like I didn't grow up in the good years of Detroit Pistons basketball, right? My first Pistons player one of the first Pistons players I ever met as a young boy, I believe was Kyle Singler. So just to give a bit of context here, much respect to Joe D. And on a serious note, I feel like the reason why he wasn't given a second shot is because now we're in a league where there's a lot more black executives. But typically, like when you mess up something like that as a black person in the front office or as a coach, and a lot of the NBA before today, that was it. Like no matter what you did, that was it. So I just want to give a shout out to Joe D. For holding it down when he did. Is right now the greatest time to come back? I don't know. I feel like Pelicans ownership might be secretly Pistons admirers because they got Stan Van Gundy after he was gone from the Pistons, and then they're now doing the Joe D thing, and then Trajan went from here to Detroit. Whole thing. If Zion gets traded, though, I'm looking at ownership with a raised eyebrow because they hired Joe Dumars to take that hit for them. I hope he can do a good job with what he's given with the Pelicans, and I hope that organization could finally see some form of relevance because it has been a long time.
Matt, go ahead and wrap it up with your final thoughts.
I'm rooting for Joe Dumars because of everything that he means to this franchise. I'm not buying that stock. I'll just say I'm not going to buy the Pelican stock. I think I will also say it's not his fault that he has to trade Zion. Obviously, that's coming from ownership. I would not trade Zion. Like I think I think odds are just kind of how things work out. Probably ends up looking bad in a few years. Like that's just my guess as a Zion believer. Maybe we should do a show this summer. We should try. We could start building some Pistons Zion trades.
Pistons fans, they're very vocal on both sides about potential Zion moves. Very, very vocal on both sides. So I don't know. We'll have to revisit. But
I remember no Killian, no Sadiq.
That was quite the time. All right, so we'll see if it ends up officially. It hasn't officially happened, but all signs are pointing to apparently that Joe D will be going over to the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll see how it goes. I'm rooting for him. I want him to do well with the second chance. It ended bad, but hopefully he's able to muster up some of the magic he had during the first 6-7 years of his time with the Pistons. I want to wrap it up with this though. Quick answers from both you guys. Predictions for the series. If I don't have you guys on by the time Saturday rolls around, we got a lot of guests coming on, a lot of busy stuff. So I don't know if I'll have you guys on again. So before Saturday, what's your guys' predictions on the series? Zara, you go ahead and go first.
Pistons in 6. One Knicks player gets traded or Tibbs gets fired as a result because it'll be pretty embarrassing for them.
Okay. All right. Matt, go ahead.
I've also got the Pistons in 6 because I think Game 7 in MSG would not go our way. They get bogged down. They come into the mud, and they're not as comfortable in the mud as the Pistons are. We're in transition. Cade's lighting up OG Anunoby as he has done for his entire career, and we're looking at a matchup with Boston, which is not I don't like that as much.
All right, there you go. You guys will not get my prediction. Everyone who's listening, you guys are not getting my prediction until Friday. We'll wait till Friday when we do the big prediction. Last episode, man, I can't spoil it. I can't spoil it. 5 episodes.
I'm leaving a horrible comment under an anonymous account.
I won't be able to tell yours apart. We get quite a few crazy ones, but it is what it is. All right,
I look a lot like Jalen Green.
I appreciate you guys coming on. You guys can find Matt over on Twitter at Griff1on1. Again, you can find his podcast, Teal or No Teal. Also, you can find him over on the radio, 100.9 The Payoff. Also, you can find my guys, Xavier, over on Instagram with that exact tag. Also, you can find him on Twitter with the exact same tag, doing some great work, taking some great photos for your Piston players. He should be getting some more recognition than he is and some more
much love.
much love. A lot more
Appreciate
love.
That.
A lot more love than he's getting. But
Appreciate that.
I can do that.
We'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. And until next time, we will see you guys later. Playoffs coming up. Stay tuned, man. Go Pistons. Detroit basketball back in the playoffs. Catch y'all later.